Before we get to the story, I'd like to say thanks so much for visiting my new channel. I'm going to be uploading cosmic horror related stories every single day. So if that sounds good, please drop a like and don't forget to subscribe. It means a lot, especially when just getting started. I hope you enjoy the story. I've been farming this land my whole life. My father farmed it before me, and his father before him. The Hollis farm has been in my family for nearly 100 years, passed down through generations like an inheritance that never stops giving and never stops taking. My name is Garrett Hollis. I'm 47 years old, and I know every acre of this property the way I know my own body. Every drainage ditch, every rise and fall of the terrain, every patch where the soil runs thin and the corn grows shorter. I've walked these fields in every season, in every kind of weather, and I thought I understood them completely. I was wrong. It started in late August, when the corn was tall and green and just a few weeks from harvest. I was doing my morning walk along the eastern edge of the property, checking for damage from the storm that had rolled through the night before. That's when I found the first path. Something had cut through the corn in a straight line, running from the tree line deep into the fields. Not a random animal trail, not the meandering track of deer or coyotes. This was deliberate, precise, almost perfectly straight, for as far as I could see. The corn stalks along the path weren't just trampled. They were pressed flat, laid down in one direction like something heavy had walked through and pushed them aside. I followed the path for nearly a quarter mile before it simply ended in the middle of the field. No footprints in the soil, no sign of what made it. Nothing at the end to explain where the walker had gone. I stood there in the morning light, surrounded by my corn, and felt the first stirring of something I hadn't felt since I was a child. Fear of the dark places between the rows. My younger brother Teddy lives in a small house on the edge of the property, helps me work the land. When I showed him the path, he crouched down and examined the flattened stalks with a frown. "This isn't kids," he said. "Look how straight it runs. Drunk teenagers don't walk in straight lines, and they sure don't press corn down this flat." Then what? Teddy didn't have an answer. Neither did I. We decided to keep watch that night, sitting on the porch with coffee and a flashlight, watching the fields in the darkness. We saw nothing, heard nothing except the usual sounds of a summer night. But when morning came, there was a second path running parallel to the first, about 30 yards to the south. Something was walking through our cornfields at night, and we couldn't see what it was. Over the next week, new paths appeared almost every night. Always straight lines, always starting from the tree line, always ending somewhere in the middle of the fields. I started marking them on a hand-drawn map, trying to find a pattern, but the lines didn't form any shape I could recognize. The local sheriff, Dale Jessup, came out to look. He walked the paths, examined the flattened corn, and shook his head. "I've never seen anything like this, Garrett. Wish I could tell you what's doing it. You think it's people? I don't know what to think. But keep your doors locked and call me if you see anything." He drove away, and I stood at the edge of my fields, feeling more alone than I'd felt in years. It was Teddy who first noticed what was happening to the corn along the paths. "Look at this," he called to me one morning, crouching beside a row of flattened stalks. "Something's wrong with it. I knelt down beside him and saw what he meant. The corn along the path wasn't just bent over. It had changed color, faded to a pale grey-green that didn't match any disease or blight I'd ever seen. I pulled an ear from one of the affected stalks and peeled back the husk. The kernels inside were shriveled and hollow, dried out like something had sucked the life out of them. Teddy cut open one of the stalks with his pocket knife, and we both stared at the interior. It should have been fibrous and moist, the living tissue of a healthy plant. Instead, it was dry and brittle, crumbling like something that had been dead for years. "This was fine yesterday," Teddy said, his voice hushed. "I walked past this exact spot yesterday afternoon, and it was green and healthy." The discoloration began spreading outward from the paths over the following days, a foot at first, then 2 feet, then 5. The grey-green crept through the field like an infection, and I realized that whatever was walking through my corn wasn't just passing through. It was taking something. I decided to keep watch myself, alone, determined to see what was making the paths. I set up a lawn chair at the edge of the field, wrapped in a blanket against the cool night air, and watched. The hours crawled by. Midnight came and went, 1 in the morning, 2. Around 3, I saw movement. Something was walking through the corn about 50 yards away. I could see the stalks bending as it passed, could track its progress by the disturbance it created. But I couldn't see the walker itself, not clearly. It was like looking at a shadow, a darker place in the darkness, a shape that didn't quite resolve no matter how hard I strained my eyes. I turned on my flashlight and pointed the beam toward the movement. The light illuminated nothing. Just corn, just empty rows, just the green stalk standing still in the night air. But I could still see the movement, still see something walking, as if the light passed through it without touching. The shape was roughly humanoid, but wrong in proportion. Too tall, maybe 8 or 9 feet. Too thin, with limbs that seemed stretched beyond normal length. It walked with a strange, measured gait, each step taking exactly the same amount of time as the last. I watched it move through the corn, watched the stalks bend and flatten in its wake. Then it stopped, and I had the terrible sense that it knew I was watching. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe. The figure stood motionless in the field for what felt like hours, though it was probably only seconds. I felt its attention on me like a weight, like a pressure against my skin. Then it turned and continued walking, disappearing into the darkness, leaving another flattened path behind it. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. When dawn came, I walked out to where I'd seen the figure and found a new path exactly where it had walked. The corn along that path was already grey-green and dying. Whatever was walking through my fields, it wasn't human, and it wasn't going to stop. Teddy started searching online for similar stories, and what he found both reassured and terrified me. We weren't alone. This had happened before, in other places, going back decades. Stories of paths appearing in fields overnight, of crops that withered along the trails. Most were dismissed as hoaxes or plant diseases, but the descriptions matched what we were seeing. Straight paths, dying crops, the sense of something walking in the darkness. I visited Merle Denniston, the oldest farmer in the county, now in his 90s, and living in a nursing home 2 towns over. Merle's family had farmed this region before mine, going back to the 1870s. When I described what was happening, the color drained from his face. "My grandmother told me about this," he said, his voice thin and trembling. "She saw it once, when she was a girl. Said something walked through the wheat fields for a whole summer. By fall, half the crop was dead." "What was it, Merle?" He shook his head slowly. "She didn't know. Nobody knew. They just waited for it to stop. And eventually it did. But she never forgot what she saw. Said it walked like a man, but wasn't a man. Said looking at it made her feel like she was very small and very far from anything that could help her." I dug into local history after that, searching old newspapers and county records and letters from early settlers. The walking had been happening for as long as anyone had farmed this land. Every few generations, something moved through the fields at night. The reports went back as far as records existed, and probably further. No one had ever explained what it was. No one had ever stopped it. I hired an agricultural scientist from the State University, Dr. Colleen Fry, to examine my fields. She took soil samples and plant samples, photographs and measurements. When she came back with her results, her face was troubled. "The soil along the paths has been altered at a chemical level," she said. "Certain trace elements are completely absent. Minerals that should be present in any healthy soil have been removed." "Removed how?" "That's what I can't explain. It's like something extracted specific components, very precisely, very thoroughly. The plants aren't diseased. They're depleted, drained of essential nutrients that have somehow been taken from the soil itself." I told her about the figure I'd seen, and she looked at me with a mixture of concern and skepticism. "I'm a scientist," she said. "I don't believe in ghosts or monsters, but I also can't explain what's happening to your fields. Something is taking specific elements from your soil, and I have no idea what could do that." Dr. Fry contacted colleagues searching for similar cases. What she discovered made everything worse. The phenomenon wasn't limited to our region. It happened worldwide, on every continent, in every type of agricultural land. Reports from South America, from Eastern Europe, from Asia and Australia. Wherever humans grew crops, the walking paths occasionally appeared, and wherever they appeared, the same extraction occurred. "It's not random," Dr. Fry told me during her next visit. "It's selective. Whatever is doing this knows exactly what it wants." Teddy had been following Dr. Fry's research, and one evening he came to me with a theory he was almost afraid to share. "The elements being extracted aren't random," he said. "They're specific isotopes, specific compounds that are rare in the broader universe. Plants concentrate these elements through their normal processes, pulling them from the soil, filtering them from the water. So," Teddy hesitated, "what if that's the point? What if plants have always been collecting something, and we've just been helping?" He explained his theory, and as he spoke, I felt the ground shift beneath my understanding of everything I'd ever known. Life on Earth wasn't accidental. It was planted, seeded, cultivated, designed to extract and concentrate certain rare elements from the planet's surface. Photosynthesis, the process that makes plants grow, might have been engineered specifically for this purpose. Humanity's development of agriculture wasn't random either. It was guided, encouraged, pushed towards maximum cultivation. "We're farmers," Teddy said. "But we're not farming for ourselves. We're farming for something else. And now it's harvest time." I didn't want to believe it, but the pieces fit too well. The paths had been appearing for as long as humans had farmed this land. The walking figures moved through the fields like farmhands checking crops. The extraction removed exactly what Teddy's theory predicted. "If that's true," I said slowly, "then what happens when the harvest is done?" Neither of us had an answer. The pace of the walking increased dramatically over the following weeks. What had been one path per night became 3, then 5, then a dozen. I saw multiple figures now, moving through different sections of the field simultaneously. They didn't interact with each other, didn't seem to notice each other. They just walked their paths, extracted what they came for, and disappeared. Reports came in from neighboring farms. The same paths, the same dying crops, the same figures seen at night. The phenomenon was spreading across the entire county. Farmers gathered at the local Grange Hall to share information. Some wanted to call in the authorities. Others wanted to organize hunting parties to confront whatever was walking through our fields. I tried to explain what I'd learned, but most people didn't want to hear it. A few farmers tried to stop the walkers directly, standing in the paths with guns and flashlights. They reported the same thing I'd experienced. The figures walked around them or through them, as if they weren't there. One man, Cal Bridger, claimed he tried to grab one of the walkers. His hand passed through it like smoke, and where he touched it, his arm went numb for hours. "It's not really here," Cal said, his voice shaking. "It's somewhere else, and we're just seeing the shadow of it." Dr. Fry arrived with new data and a new understanding. "The walkers aren't creatures in any biological sense," she explained. "They're more like processes, like functions being executed. Think of them like the cursor on a computer screen. They're not the program. They're just the visible indicator that the program is running." The actual extraction was happening at a level we couldn't perceive. The walking figures were simply the visible manifestation of that process, the shadow of something operating beyond human understanding. And the harvest was happening everywhere, simultaneously, on every farm, on every continent. Satellite imagery showed the paths spreading across entire regions. Whatever was collecting the harvest was doing so globally, systematically. "This isn't an invasion," Dr. Fry said. "It's agriculture, cosmic agriculture, and we're the crops." Within 3 weeks, my farm was destroyed. Every stalk of corn was grey and lifeless, the fields looking like they'd been dead for years. The same was true across the county, across the state, across the country. News reports showed the devastation spreading worldwide, crops failing everywhere, the walking paths visible in every agricultural region on the planet. Then as suddenly as it began, the walking stopped. One morning I woke to find no new paths, no figures in the fields, no sense of presence. The silence was almost worse than the walking. It felt final, complete. Whatever came to harvest had finished its work and moved on. I walked through my ruined fields, looking at the grey stalks, the barren soil. Everything my family had built over 100 years was gone. But I was alive. Teddy was alive. The farmhouse still stood. The harvest took what it wanted from the plants, but it left the humans untouched. We were never the crop. We were just the farmers, cultivating something for someone else. In the months that followed, humanity began to recover. The affected soil was damaged, but not dead. New plants could grow, though yields were reduced. Scientists estimated it would take decades for the land to fully recover, for the extracted elements to accumulate again. Food shortages caused hardship worldwide, but humanity survived. The walkers didn't return. Dr. Fry published her research, explaining what she believed had occurred. Life on Earth was seeded billions of years ago, designed to extract and concentrate certain rare elements. Agriculture was humanity's role in this cosmic farm, accelerating the concentration process. The harvest had been a collection event, gathering what had accumulated over millions of years. It might happen again someday, when enough had been collected to make another harvest worthwhile. But that wouldn't be for thousands of years, perhaps millions. What do the harvesters use the extracted elements for? Dr. Fry didn't know, and perhaps humans never will. The elements are rare in the universe, valuable for reasons beyond our understanding. Perhaps they fuel something, or build something, or serve a purpose that has no human equivalent. The harvesters don't explain themselves any more than farmers explain themselves to wheat. The following spring, I planted new crops. The soil was weaker, the yields would be smaller, but the farm could still produce. I worked the fields knowing what I now knew, that agriculture is older than humanity, that farming serves a purpose beyond human need. It changes nothing and everything at the same time. I think about my grandfather sometimes, and his father before him. All the generation who worked this land without knowing what they were really doing. They thought they were feeding their families, building a legacy, connecting with the earth beneath their feet. And they were. But they were also serving something else, something vast and patient that planted seeds long before humans evolved. I stand at the edge of my field at dusk, watching the new corn grow. It's green and healthy, reaching toward the sun, beginning the long process of concentration again. Somewhere out there, something is waiting, counting the years until the next harvest. Humanity will keep farming, keep growing, keep cultivating without knowing the full purpose of our work. And someday, thousands of years from now, or millions, the walking will begin again. The shadows will move through the fields at night, and the harvest will be collected, and the cycle will continue. That's the truth I've learned to live with. The sunset paints the sky red and gold, and I watch it fade into darkness. The stars come out one by one, and I wonder which of them look down on other farms, other fields, other crops being cultivated for the same harvest. I think about the figure I saw walking through my corn that night, the shadow of something from somewhere else, collecting what it came for with the same patience a farmer shows his crops. It didn't hate me, didn't fear me, didn't even notice me except as an obstacle to walk around. I was never important to the process. None of us were. We were just the farmers, tending crops we didn't understand, growing something for someone else. Teddy comes out and stands beside me, looking at the fields. "Corn's coming up good," he says. "It is. Think it'll be enough to make it through the year?" "I think so. We'll manage." We stand there in silence for a while, two farmers watching their fields, The way our family has watched these fields for 100 years. The way farmers have watched their fields since the first humans scratched seeds into the dirt and waited for them to grow. I don't know why life exists. I don't know why the universe works the way it does. I don't know what purpose we serve or what meaning our lives have in the grand scheme of things, but I know how to farm. I know how to plant seeds and tend crops and wait for the harvest. That's what I was made for, whether I understood it or not. The corn grows towards the sun, pulling elements from the soil, concentrating them in leaves and stalks and kernels. The farm produces what it was always meant to produce. And I am what I was always meant to be. A farmer, tending crops I don't fully understand, for a harvest I may never see. That's the truth I've made peace with. The fields grow, the seasons turn, and somewhere something waits. That's all there is. That's all there's ever been. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all it needs to be. We live, we work, we grow things, and we pass the land on to the next generation. The purpose might be bigger than we ever imagined, but the work is the same. I turn away from the fields and walk back toward the house, where the lights are warm and the coffee is hot, and my brother is waiting to play cards before bed. Tomorrow, I'll be up early, checking the corn, pulling weeds, doing the 1,000 small tasks that keep a farm running. The work never ends, and maybe that's the point.